I've been really looking forward to talking to my next guest, who is an award-winning spoken word artist, secondary school history teacher, research fellow at Birkbeck University's Centre for British Political Life, and now an author too. Jaspreet Kaur's debut book, Brown Girl Like Me, is, I suppose, described as a letter to her younger self. It explores many taboo subjects in the Asian community, including mental health, menstruation, hair growth. This is something you will learn about. Jaspreet, good morning.
Morning, Naga. Thank you so much for having me. Happy New Year.
Thank you for talking to me. Listen, what made you write this book?
Oh, there's so many reasons why I wrote this book. But I think just like you said there in the introduction, it really is a letter to my younger self. I think this book is really the book I wished existed when I was a teenager growing up as an Asian girl here in the UK. Just feeling like we felt like we were being erased. Like I felt like I grew up never seeing books for Asian girls. I never saw many Asian women on TV screens. There never was that kind of representation out there growing up. So this was really the book I wish I had, as like a guidebook, a toolkit to navigate what it's like as an Asian woman here in the UK and the multiple parts of our identity. So yeah, it really is a letter to my younger self.
Do you think it would have changed how the kind of traps, and I will call them traps, that family were in? You know, like when they often, young Asian brown girls, I'm not sure if we're similar age, I'm 46, but similar age of this time where we were just told, don't be too loud. Don't be, don't be too much. It's not nice. It's not a nice thing to do. Do you think if you'd shown this book when you were a young girl to your family, surrounding family, that would have changed their attitudes?
I really do hope so. Yeah, that's definitely one of the aims of this book. And I talk about family quite a lot in this book because it's a huge part of an Asian woman's identity of navigating family life and home life and the good, the bad, the ugly that comes with that. So I think I really do wish that if I had given this book to my family and to other families that I know, that hopefully it would have changed how they treated their daughters and treated girls within their family. Because as we know, the experience of young Asian men and how they're treated within the home is very, very different to Asian girls. So yeah, I really do.
Well, we know. So should we describe it to anyone who doesn't know? I mean, my experience is that the boys are almost godlike, and you know they are encouraged to be loud and to eat first often, and to not do so much housework because it's not their jobs.
Yeah. So we as Asian girls are brought up to learn how to cook, clean, all those domestic chores and looking after the home. And not so much as learning chores because they're good to know those responsibilities, but more as a way to prepare us for marriage. When on the other hand, our brothers would be sprawled out on the sofa watching TV, eating What's-It. So it's like that comparison of what our upbringings were like were very different to our brothers.
Do you know, I'm going to give it
in our families.
I'm going to give it to my mum. We were two sisters. We were no boys other than my dad and my family. I'm going to give it to my mum. She refused to for me to do too much around the house because she said, you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life. I don't want you to do it now, which was I'm kind of grateful for her, but I didn't learn to cook any Indian food until my 20s. You did say your dad is one of the greatest feminists you've ever known. That's quite rare in an Asian family.
It really is. It really is. And he is one of the greatest feminists I've ever known, because in our household, the interesting thing was that my dad always wanted to treat me the same as my brothers. And I'm so grateful for that. And education was obviously very important to my parents, as it is to most immigrant families. But I remember my dad always making sure that education was equally as important for me than it was for my brothers, and really kind of pushing and supporting my dreams as a young Asian girl. He was definitely always there for me. So yeah, that's why specifically in that parenting chapter, when I'm talking about raising a brown feminist and the complicated nuances behind parenthood, I really wanted to convey what my dad was like and how, he was a feminist. He may never have been kind of marching at feminist protest or there with me on International Women's Day in that sense, but in terms of the values and the ideals that he installed in me and my family, he definitely is a feminist, and I think he'd proudly say he is as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? Do you think perhaps he knew what you would be facing, say, particularly when you got to university, and perhaps the box that was many Asian women particularly were put in?
Yeah, I think deep down he did know that, and he kind of knew what was going to be coming for me and those difficulties that I was going to face. And the best that he could was preparing me for all of that. But only he knew so much of what that was going to look like.
I'm going to quote something from you, because I think this is what I'm getting at, and you phrase it really well. You were talking about when you were in university and you went into a class. And you say the last to leave the class was a young brown girl. I'd seen her around during Freshers' Week earlier that year. She gave me a small smile and left the door slightly ajar. I picked up my bag and was about to head into the room when I heard, they are going to be married off as soon as they leave here. So what's the point in raising their expectations? Did he mean us brown girls? I mean, it was so surprising to see that, because that's something that could be felt very often.
And feeling that in educational establishments is definitely really difficult for Asian girls, because academically we're doing so well. Asian girls are the second smartest group in the country. We kind of follow closely behind Chinese boys and girls.
Academically achieving.
Yeah, academically achieving really, really well. But in terms of our aspirations and in terms of the support and the motivation that we're getting from educational institutions, it's just not there, both at kind of secondary level, and then from that personal experience, we can see that at kind of higher education as well, that there are these kind of narratives and labels and stereotypes attached to Asian girls that, they don't have many dreams, they don't have many aspirations, because they're just going to go get married and have kids. So we're not getting the support or maybe the confidence boost that we necessarily need.
How did you deal with the microaggressions? I think, often described as like lots of paper cuts. And once you get to the 10th paper cut, you're furious. One's bad enough, but you don't realise why you're getting so annoyed until they are just numerous and you can't ignore them. How did you deal with those?
Yeah, those paper cuts, and that's exactly how I describe it in the book, that it is these kind of small comments, these micro insults that happen on a daily basis. And you're right, when they first happen, you don't really think much about it. You're like, okay, it's a little comment here, it's a little comment there, a comment about your lunch, your name being mispronounced, somebody making assumptions about you. But when you're getting multitudes of those on a daily basis, obviously it's going to impact your self-confidence and how you feel about yourself. So that chapter on managing microaggressions, I've done my best on kind of providing tools and tips from myself and other South Asian women on how to manage those moments when they do come up. And there's different approaches to it that I've suggested in the book, whether that's giving us a comment or making a remark back straight away, whether it's kind of taking a moment to pause and reflect on the situation and thinking about how you can deal with it later on. So I've given kind of those tools and tips and tips.
I could never wait. I always had to just throw it straight back out there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like I'm a bit slow on that sense. Like I'll later on in the day be like, oh damn, I should have said this, or
that means you dwelled on it. You dwelled on it, you see, which is no good for you. It's almost giving those microaggressions even more importance by dwelling on it. Anyway, we all have different ways of dealing with stuff, don't we?
But this is it. I guess the confidence to be able to handle those situations then and there is what I want, hopefully, Asian women to feel like they can do, to build that confidence, to be like, okay, I know what to say and I know what to do if these situations ever come up.
Can we talk about hair? Asian women and hair.
Yes.
So I'm very fortunate. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much hair you have. But I always thought I was very fortunate because I'm not massively hairy on my, legs and arms. But it is the bane of so many Asian women's lives. And we're not really taught how to deal with it.
And even just that kind of feeling of like, not wanting it, or feeling like we should be embarrassed of it, or even feeling proud if we have less hair, or feeling less hairy, is something that we definitely need to deconstruct and really challenge. That why is it that hair on women's bodies is such a problem? Why are people so offended by it? And what I specifically highlight in that chapter, I think it is getting better. And I think what I wanted to highlight in the book is that during this kind of recent wave of the feminist movement, we are talking about body image, we are talking about body hair, but Asian women were really neglected from that conversation, because body hair on white bodies was seen as a bit more acceptable. We'd see celebrities showing their body hair online, and it's usually white women and white celebrities showing their body hair, and that would be kind of deemed acceptable. But when it's on darker bodies, when it's on black bodies or on brown bodies, that's when it's seen a bit more problematic, or it's seen less beautiful. And that's what I wanted to kind of challenge, that why does that exist? And ultimately, I want Asian girls to feel proud of their bodies in all shapes and forms, and whatever comes with it. And obviously, it's everybody's personal choice whether they want to keep their body hair or not. But what I'm asking is it really our own choice if we are keeping it or not? Or are we being told it's not acceptable if we do choose to keep it? So it's really kind of unpacking all of that, and unpacking the history of body hair, when it started to be considered unacceptable, looking at the kind of cultural contexts of where it's seen as beautiful. So yeah, it's a really interesting conversation, but specifically for Asian girls, it's something, as soon as we hit puberty, we've got this extra kind of layer, literally, to deal with when it comes to body image.
When do you think we turned against body hair?
I think what I've analysed in the book is it's a lot to do with advertising. It's lots to do with consumerism, and in the early kind of 19th century and early 20th century, when some of these brands started to come out that really picked on the fact that they could make money out of women removing their body hair, and specifically kind of in the Western world in the 1920s. When we started going into like the roaring 20s, the swinging 20s, women's dress sense started to change, wearing shorter dresses, showing more skin. Obviously, more body hair was then on show. So there were certain companies and certain corporations that really latched onto that and wanted to make money out of that. And I think that's when we started to really see a shift after the First World War into the 1920s, definitely here in the Western world anyway.
And now we see adverts where women do have upper lip hair. And, hair where it's completely natural, but it previously had been taboo.
And that's what we need to normalize. And I guess when you see adverts like that now, that is showing body hair in its natural form, it is a little bit surprising. I remember when I first kind of saw an ad about 2-3 years ago with body hair being shown, I was surprised to see it on a TV screen, because you just never used to see it. But I think that's what we need to see more of, just it being normalized, not making a big fuss of it, but just showing that this is women's bodies, this is what they look like, and for that to be seen as normal.
One of the taboos in your book, the taboo subjects addressed, is mental health. And you suffered from depression and anxiety from a young age, from early teens. How was that received in your community?
Mental health was a really important topic for me to tackle in this book. And I started the book with the mental health chapter as well, which was something I was debating for a while, whether I wanted to start with such a heavy topic. But I'm really glad I did. And the reason why I wanted to was because when I first started suffering from anxiety attacks, and that was around the age of 13, I had no idea what I was going through. I didn't even know what an anxiety attack was. And because it was such a taboo, and because I'd heard such negative tropes about mental health and how it was seen, I just didn't speak to anybody. I didn't talk to my family about it. I didn't speak to my friends about it, no one at school. And that just made the situation even worse. And obviously not having access to mental health services at that age either, because I was scared to speak to my family GP, because I thought my GP would then tell my family and my community. There was all those fears. It just got worse and worse. So that's something that definitely needs to change within this next generation. And I think there's a major shift happening, that we are now starting to talk about mental health within our communities, and most importantly, within our homes. So yeah, that chapter is really, really important to me. And I'm hoping no other Asian women or other people within the Asian community have to suffer in silence like that ever again.
On a brighter note, can you tell me what it's like having someone in your life who dries grapes individually for you to take to work?
Say that again for me.
Can you talk to me about how joyful it is having someone in your life who pats dry individual grapes for you to take to work every night?
Oh, BG.
She sounds amazing. Tell us who she is.
She is honestly... She's my best friend. So BG is actually my husband's nanny G. So it's my husband's maternal grandma, who's a big figure in his life. But when I got married and met her, honestly, I felt like I found my soulmate in her. She is the most incredible woman that I've ever met. And a woman in her late 80s who suffered a lot as an Asian woman. She was a widow at a young age. So as a widow in the Asian community, definitely was treated in a lot of difficult ways. But despite all that hardship, she's just such a loving, caring, kind person. And that example you just gave of her individually drying my grapes, cool. Washing them, drying them, packing them for me to take to work every day is just like one small example of her kindness.
Jaspreet Kaur, really thank you. And thank you, BG. Brown Girl Like Me, out in February.